Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, a recent video posted to social media, including powerful Democrats here in North Carolina, is filled with profanity. We'll get into all the details and reaction coming up. And a good Tuesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand. It's real simple, real easy to do so. Just search for the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app or visit the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. LawGroupNC.com is their website, or their phone number, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. Great to be back after a couple of days off, a busy couple of days in the news space. We were keeping an eye on a lot of different details, some significant progress with Iran, oil prices plummeting, a signing ceremony expected coming up later on this week. We'll get into all of those details as we work through the middle of June here on the Nick Craig Show. All right, so there has been a viral social media video that has been popping off over the last couple of days. It includes some prominent Democrats here in the state of North Carolina. And the reason said video is gaining a lot of attention and is garnering some pretty significant conversation is because it is profanity-laced. Now, let me start off by stating this. What you're going to hear on the show today is not me pearl-clutching over profanity. I don't particularly care. That might have something to do with the generation in which I am in. This conversation is not going to be based around, oh my gosh, somebody used profanity. That's not the issue here. The problem, from my vantage point, is that the North Carolina Democrats are in a position where they are so useless, they are so ineffective at what they do, that all they can really strive for now is to go on Instagram and use a bunch of quote-unquote mean words, a bunch of words you're not allowed to say, quote-unquote, to attack Republicans. This is more of a damning indictment of the Democrat Party than anything else. It shows that the current minority party here in North Carolina, which is the Democrat Party, they've been in the minority in the North Carolina General Assembly for 15 years now, are so inefficient, so useless at their job that this is all that they're left with. And I think this paints a very bleak picture. If you are a Democrat here in North Carolina, this paints a very bleak picture moving forward because there's really nowhere else to go besides down. I mean, that's really the position and the point that we're at. The video in question, if you haven't already seen it, I'm going to play it for you coming up in just a little bit, includes Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch. And when we say Senate Minority Leader, she's the top Democrat in the North Carolina Senate. We have the Majority Leader, or in this case, what we call the Speaker Pro Tem. That's Phil Berger. The Republicans are in the majority. He is the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. The minority leader in the Democrat Party, currently the party in minority, Sidney Batch, is the top dog in the North Carolina Senate. All roads stop with her within the Democrat Party in the Senate. That's the position that she holds as Senate Minority Leader. So this is not some random member of the North Carolina General Assembly. I think it is fair to assess this and fair to say this is a top Democrat in the state of North Carolina, based on her title, based on the position that she holds. I think that is a fair description of her and her position. So late last week, this video, which included another representative, Vernetta Alston, who is a Democrat from Durham County, posts this video on Instagram talking about some of the issues that Democrats have with Republicans, which is no surprise when you've got both political parties. Republicans have problems with Democrats. Democrats have problems with Republicans. There's nothing new here. This is I'm not bringing you any breaking news on the program here on this Tuesday. This is a pretty common thing that happens in politics. Parties tend to not agree on a lot of issues, and they have disagreements. So this video is posted, and it includes Representative Alston talking about some of the issues that are taking place in the North Carolina General Assembly, most predominantly the lack of a state budget, which we've talked about in great detail here on the Nick Craig Show. And lawmakers have continued to state that over the next couple of days, we will see, or over the next couple of weeks here before the end of June, that we will see a full budget deal. This was announced a little over a month ago by House Speaker Destin Hall and Senate Pro Tem Phil Berger. They announced that they had come together on a deal, that they had agreed to some of the major issues dealing with tax priorities, raises for state employees, teachers, correction officer workers, law enforcement officers, a whole litany of things. They are finishing the process in their budget committee meetings to hammer out all of the final details. And from all accounts, we are still on track to have a state budget passed sometime by the end of June or potentially the first couple of days in July. That's the plan. Could that fall through? Could the timeline on that be delayed? Absolutely. There's, of course, always a real possibility of that. I can't say for certain sitting here today whether or not it is going to come to fruition in that time frame, but that is what we have been told. That is the information that I'm working on. Democrats have found themselves very frustrated, and I would argue in large part Republicans too, with the lack of a state budget. It's been a problem. I've said right here on this very program, I think this is a terrible look for Republicans. They've had a majority in the General Assembly for 15 years now. They could not come to a budget agreement during the legislative long session in 2025, and I think it's a problem. I really do. I'm a supporter of the Republican majority. I'm a supporter of a lot of the individuals that we talk about here on this show. Unlike those on the political left, see, I can be critical of my own party and say that it is a bad look for Republicans to have not passed a budget. Unlike the political left, I can be an equal opportunity offender on this stuff. I can say the Democrats' ideas, which they in fact are, very stupid and idiotic. At the same time, I can say Republicans in their lack of an ability to come together on a budget last year was incredibly stupid. Now they have their reasons. They will defend it. My position is one that's very clear and has been very consistent. It's a bad look for Republicans. It shows a lack of leadership, and it's a major problem for them to deal with. Now, they seem to have a solution here in June of 2026. I'm grateful for that. It does not excuse what I think was a major problem during the legislative long session. They have the votes. They have the majorities. They could have gotten this done. They could not come to an agreement on tax policy and a couple of other issues. So we were without a budget. And I think that's a really, really bad look. Notice the key difference there, folks. Able to be critical of your own party. I know it's a wild concept for individuals on the political left to grasp their head around and really try and rationalize and understand. So as I mentioned, this video posted last week was supposedly satire that includes these two representatives, the minority leader, Sidney Batch, the Democrat from Wake County, and Representative Vernetta Alston, the Democrat from Durham County. They are sitting in an office within the North Carolina General Assembly, sitting in front of a laptop screen that's open that has a virtual fireplace on it, talking about some of the things that Republicans are not doing and some of the things that they are doing that they despise. In this video, Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch dives into this profanity-ridden tirade over how terrible, evil, and awful Republicans are. Let me remind you that in her position as Senate Minority Leader, if Democrats were to gain control of the North Carolina Senate, which I don't think will happen, but if they were, presumably, she would become the leader of the North Carolina Senate. After this video, which I'm going to play for you here in just a couple of minutes, she digs into Republicans using every single expletive and profanity almost under the sun. That is not necessarily the person that I would assume would be capable and good in a leadership position. It shows a lack of maturity. It shows a lack of class. And it really shows more than anything else a lack of an ability to govern. Right? Democrats are always yelling from the sky and preaching about bipartisanship and working across the aisle. After you hear and watch this video, I think you will find it very hard to wrap your head around how anybody could possibly work with somebody like Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch. And that's really one of the big takeaways in this video and in this conversation that has taken place since. How the hell is anybody going to work with somebody that will produce a quote-unquote satire video and publish it to social media? So we're talking about this viral video, this profanity-laced viral video published by Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch and Representative Vernetta Alston out of Wake and Durham County last week. Did a little kind of intro and preview to it. So without further ado, here is the expletive-filled, of course, profanity bleeped video that was published on social media. Don't take my word for it. Take a listen for yourself.
Oh, hi. I'm Representative Vernetta Alston. Friends, times are tough. That's why I wanted to come here today, talk to you directly about the things that matter to you and your families. And because times are tough, Leader Batch wanted to join as well, except she's going to be our anger interpreter.
Instead of doing their jobs, Republicans are acting like a bunch of little because they can't deliver a budget. So we don't have else to do but sit by this fireplace and wait for them to do their job.
Republicans have yet to bring forward a state budget. That matters because without a budget, big projects like roads, school improvements can't happen. These are things that you depend on. It's a problem.
And whatever the saying at press conferences is a damn lie while they're sitting there standing on their stupid little apple crates.
But Democrats have an agenda to help make the things that you need in your everyday life, your home, your food, your access to health care, easier and less stressful to afford.
There are two teams. Democrats who are trying to make sure that you're not homeless and starving, and these Republicans who don't give a about you.
So, we also have a plan for our schools. Our kids deserve the best education. They should learn for the future of our economy so that they can become proud and prepared citizens of our great state and our country.
Meanwhile, these Republicans are giving $250 million a year to private schools so that rich kids could be taught history without fucking tax dollars. And if we keep on this pace, our kids will be living in our fucking basements.
Okay, let's try this. The great lyricist Kendrick Lamar once said, "If you speak the good into existence, that instant, your dreams will unlock." North Carolina, Democrats not only want to speak the good into existence, we want to make a great existence your reality by winning big this November.
And the great North Carolinian J. Cole once said, "I'ma pour something in my cup. I've been wanting something I could feel. November's coming and we're gonna win."
Cut.
So that's the alleged satire video. There's nothing funny about it. They're attempting to rip off a popular sketch from the two sketch comedians, the very popular sketch comedians on the Key and Peele, very popular a set of shows on Comedy Central in years past. The video is A, very poorly produced, B, not funny at all, and C, very disingenuous and a tough position for Democrats to be in. But this, as I mentioned in the open, is the problem with the current Democrat Party. And we are seeing it right here in front of our very eyes in North Carolina. Democrats have nothing to provide the citizens of North Carolina but stupid, rip-off, not funny comedy videos published on Instagram. That's it. This is your minority party in North Carolina. This is the mean and the down in the dirt Democrat Party that's going to scrap up and fight against these evil, awful, terrible Republicans. This is the best that they can muster up. A crap produced video published on social media. This is all that they've got. And it makes sense, right? Because we've seen what Democrats will usher into North Carolina. Don't take my word for it. Look at the state prior to 2010. After more than 100 years of Democrat control in the state of North Carolina, the state was broke. The state had no money. The state was hemorrhaging employees, teachers, law enforcement officers, furloughed because, God forbid we pay our essential employees. That was the Democrat Party's plan and position after 100 plus years of control prior to 2010. Republicans have taken control of the North Carolina General Assembly. They did that in the 2010 midterms and were sworn in early 2021 and 2011, and began the process of fundamentally changing the state of North Carolina for the better, making substantial changes to this state and putting us in the right direction. And what have we seen since that period of time? North Carolina consistently the number one state for business, consistently seeing more growth in this state. In terms of population, we are one of the three fastest growing states in the country, depending on the survey that you look at. It's Florida, Texas, and North Carolina, always in some order in the top three. That is not because Democrats have been in control. That's not because old Roy Cooper was in the governor's mansion. No. That's because Republicans have made substantial progress in making North Carolina a more affordable place to not only work, but live and grow your business. Those are the real policy implications that come with conservative governance and conservative leadership. You are watching it play out in front of your very eyes. I've mentioned this for a long time. We right now, I believe, are living in a golden age in North Carolina. You are seeing the struggles that other states are dealing with. Mass migration, business exodus from these states, citizens literally running for the hills because their governments are so out of control. Their governments have made it so unaffordable, so expensive to live in these places that they are booking and ordering U-Hauls at an unbelievable rate just to escape for themselves, their family, and in many cases, their businesses. They have packed up shop and said, can't do this anymore. It's not sustainable. It's not practical. You notice that those discussions and conversations are not happening here in North Carolina? While all of this stuff goes on the national stage, while you see these disastrous numbers of mass migration, mass exodus from some of these states, that North Carolina is never part of that discussion. Why? Because Republican leadership in Raleigh over the last 15 years have done a very good job at keeping government in check. Does that mean that everything is perfect? It does not. Does that mean that there is still not more progress to be made? No. It does not mean that either. There's still a lot more work for Republicans in Raleigh to do. And hopefully they will continue to do that if they retain their majorities. But when you compare and contrast what is going on in states like Illinois and California and Washington State and New York and many other states in the Northeast, when you compare that to what's going on in places like Texas, Florida, and North Carolina, you could throw a couple of other states in there as well, Georgia and South Carolina also. It is blatantly obvious to anybody that's willing to look what is going on in those different batches of states and what the difference is and what the impact of these policies are. Democrats are useless in North Carolina. They have been unsuccessful in convincing voters that they have the best ideas and best platforms going forward, so they have decided to turn to so-called edgy comedy on social media to try and win over the voters. And I'm here to tell you today that that is not going to work. It's just not. There is nothing funny about that video. Sidney Batch looks like a complete jackass in that entire thing. There's nothing funny about it at all. It's supposedly a satire piece. Just doesn't work. It's poorly produced, looks like garbage. The audio is crappy on it. I mean, the whole thing is just Bush League production by the Democrats here in North Carolina. But I guess we shouldn't be surprised, because what else is it for Democrats to do besides be quote unquote edgy on social media? I'll get into more on this coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to tell you and thank the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support here of the Nick Craig Show, and remind you that when any legal questions or challenges arise, make sure you put your trust in the Law Group. Going back to 2003, Melissa Gotten and her group of experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense, no matter the issue, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, they're not some big national law firm. Melissa Gott and her team live right here in southeastern North Carolina. Their offices located in downtown Wilmington, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online and check out their website, lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or online, lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate their continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. Quick break. More from this profanity-laced video from Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch coming up after this, as the Nick Craig Show continues, streaming live this Tuesday morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Thanks for spending some time with us here on this Tuesday as we continue our coverage of a now viral video on social media, which includes Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch diving into Republicans in a profanity-laced video in which she claims that Republicans are a bunch of little thises and that's. They don't care about you. They want to make sure that your kids live in your basement forever. They don't give an F about you. They're giving all this money away to private schools so that Rich kids can be taught history using our effing tax dollars. In November, Democrats are going to seize power here in North Carolina, something that they've been completely incapable of doing over the last 15 years. And it's drawing a lot of criticism, and I think rightfully so. Now, Democrats, including Senator Sidney Batch, has come out after this video. She was questioned by North Carolina media about this and has come out and said, well, this was supposed to be satire. Now, I watch and listen to a lot of comedy, and it's why I mentioned at the open, I'm not offended by profanity. I'm not. I'm not going to sit here and pro-clutch. Oh my God, she used bad words. I listen to a lot of comedy. I think it's funny. I think in the right context, in the right scene, profanity can add a lot, especially if you're trying to do something that is in the comedic realm. Now, that's not saying all comedy needs to be profanity-laced or profanity-ridden. There's plenty of clean comedians that I also enjoy that are very funny. But in the right context, in the right atmosphere, in the right scene, it can work. This was anything but that. You will hear comedian after comedian, and it's been said now for decades. If you have to explain a joke, if you have to explain to somebody that something is satire, if you have to explain to somebody that something is supposed to be funny, then it probably isn't. That's the whole issue. It's not going to be funny, and it isn't obviously funny if you have to explain what the comedy is behind it. And that's what Senate Minority Leader, Sidney Batch is now doing in the days that follow, in her attempt to do a parody sketch that was originally popularized by sketch comedians Key and Peele, which are two individuals that are actually funny. Sidney Batch, turns out, is not that funny, and the video that you just heard pretty clearly shows the situation going on. It's just not funny. It's not really interesting. And let me kind of lay this out for you, because I talk to people a lot about those that are in the minority party. And when you are in the minority party, which Democrats have been now for 15 years, you're really left with not a whole lot of options. Now, you can cross the aisle and work with Republicans, but as we know, Democrats don't want to do that. They never have. They never will. They preach that's what they want, right? You hear this. I played dozens of clips from the House and Senate and committee meeting floors from the North Carolina General Assembly, where you hear Democrats time and time again go back to this, oh, we just need to work. You need to work with us. You need to work across the aisle. That's what Democrats want Republicans to do. But as we know, when Democrats are in power, and I'm not being critical of them, but when they're in power, they don't work across the aisle. And I would argue they have no obligation to. The same way that Republicans have no obligation to work with Democrats. Folks, this is how politics works. If you and your party are able to convince a majority of voters that you should be in charge, that you should be leading the discussion, leading the narrative, leading the decision-making and the policy decisions in a state, in a country, in a municipality, a county, a city, whatever it might be, then you should lead. There is nothing written in government, no government charter that obligates you to work with the party that is in the minority. Now, if you can agree on an issue and work together on it, I think that's great. But this concept that the majority party, in this case, the Republicans here in North Carolina, and we see this in Washington, D.C. as well, that the Republicans are obligated to lay down and work with the minority party, which is the Democrats, is absurd. There's nothing that states that that needs to be the case. And I would argue that voters are not interested in that being the case either. There's a reason that they gave one party the majority. Now, that changes depending on the government body that we're talking about. Elections every 2, 4, or 6 years. And those individuals change. The power structure changes. We see this in Washington, D.C. every 2 to 4 years. The majority and the minority party change. There's swings. Democrats lead, then Republicans, then Democrats, then Republicans. It goes back and forth. This is a very constant thing that happens in government. Me, as a voter, when I elect, in the case of how I vote and the people that I support, when I elect Republicans, I want them to push forward the Republican agenda. I want them to put forward conservative Republican ideals and policies. I didn't elect Republicans to give Democrats the gavel. That wouldn't make any sense. And as we know and as we've seen, when Democrats are in charge, they don't bend over backwards and step across the aisle and work with Republicans. And again, that's not meant to be a critical statement. They have no obligation to. If you, as the Democrat Party, are able to gain a majority, I would presume that your voters want you to lead with your Democrat progressive ideologies. And that's okay. I disagree with those ideas. I think many of those ideas are disastrous and very stupid. But you have I would argue, the obligation to do what your voters elected you to do, which is lead, which is push forward your political agenda, your political ideology. I know some folks probably don't like hearing that, but that's the reality of politics. You elect a party to govern and lead. And, we've talked about this up in Washington, D.C. with the lack of any action in the United States Senate, and why somebody like myself and so many of you are frustrated with somebody like John Thune, right? He's been given the majority. Yes, he doesn't have 60 votes. I'm fully aware of that, but he has a majority in the United States Senate. And so the excuses of, I can't get all my senators, then you're a miserable leader. You're not good. Get out. We talked about on the show last week, pass the SAVE Act. You've got the majority. Govern, lead. That's what voters are expecting. That's why there's so much frustration with people, because they, in fact, do have said majority. This is not a brand new concept. This is not some radical idea. It's simple governance. If you are elected to lead, then you should. Now, when your party, if you're a Republican, then obviously the GOP. If you're a Democrat, then obviously the Democrat Party. When you're on the opposite side of that, it sucks. No question about it. When people that you disagree with politically are leading and passing their policies and passing their agenda, it's not great. I'll be the first to sit here and admit that. But that's the way that politics works. That's why you vote for and get majorities, so that you can, in fact, govern, so that you can, in fact, lead. It's not new. It's been going on for decades. But this whole thing creates a very interesting dynamic for Democrats moving forward, right? Because as I mentioned, they always preach this, we need to work across the aisle. We need to be part of the discussion. We need to be part of the conversation. I've seen a lot of reaction from Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch's video asking the very legitimate and very real question, if she is ever given the possibility to govern in the majority, if Senate, the North Carolina Senate switches from Republican to Democrat, based on her comments in that video, which you just heard, do you believe that she would be able to do that? Do you believe that she'd be able to practice what she preaches and work across the aisle? Based on the words that she used in her alleged parody video published on social media last week, I think the overwhelming, resounding answer to that question is no. Based on everything she just said about the Republicans, everything that she has said about what the GOP wants and does not want here in North Carolina, I think she would be totally incapable of working across the aisle, which is all you hear from Democrats every single time that they are in the minority. I mean, you can set your clock to it. When they're in the minority, it's we need to be part of the discussion. When they're in the majority, it's, we need to govern, we need to lead. You can't have it both ways. You can't beg to be part of the discussion when you're in the minority and then not let the other party in when you have the majority. It is totally hypocritical. We are covering continued reaction and I would argue maybe a little bit of fallout from an interesting viral video, a profanity-laced viral video published on social media late last week, including a Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch, the Democrat from Wake County, and Representative Vernetta Alston, a Democrat from Durham County. House Majority Leader Brendan Jones publishing a letter or posting a letter and sending it out as a press release last week on this. I'll read through just a little bit of his letter in response to this profanity-laced video talking about how awful Republicans are and all the things that they're failing to do. He writes this in part. House Majority Leader Brendan Jones calls on Minority Leader Robert Reeves to discipline members of his caucus involved in a video posted publicly by the House Democrat Conference Chair Vernetta Alston featuring vulgar and inappropriate language from Democratic legislative leaders, including Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch. In the video posted and promoted by the House Democrat Conference Chair Representative Vernetta Alston and Sidney Batch, outlandish claims that there are two teams, Democrats who are trying to make sure that you're not homeless and starving, and these blanking Republicans who don't give a blank about you. Moreover, Leader Batch claimed that Republicans are giving away $250 million a year to private school so that rich kids can get taught history. They go on and on and on in this video. Brendan Jones comments and says, I am deeply disappointed to see members of Democrat leadership conduct themselves so unprofessionally in a public video. The people of North Carolina deserve elected officials who understand the seriousness of the offices they hold. Instead, Democratic leaders chose to post a video filled with profanity, political insults, and juvenile stunts. This conduct is beneath the dignity of North Carolina General Assembly and beneath our standards our constituents expect from us. Jones went on to say Leader Reeves is responsible for the conduct of his caucus, especially when members of his own leadership team are involved. If House Democrat leaderships believe that profanity-laced videos, political stunts, and political insults and childish stunts are acceptable from their own members, then they should just say so. If not, Leader Reeves should condemn it and take appropriate disciplinary action. Now, no surprise here. The minority leader in the North Carolina House and Representative Robert Reeves has said nothing. He has been radio silent on said issue since last week, which I think really tells you the whole moral of the story here. Batch, the one in the video using all the profanity, immediately came out when she was questioned and said, I'm defending these actions. This was satire. This is comedy. The fact that Leader Reeves hasn't said anything, I think goes to show you that this was not well taken by Democrats. And I've heard through the grapevine, talking to some of my sources in Raleigh, some of my sources in the North Carolina General Assembly, that Democrats in Raleigh are not a fan of this video. They have, and this of course being relayed secondhand, have said that this makes them look very childish, very immature, and is not something that Democrats want to have around their neck. It's not something that Democrats have to want to answer for. And, this is kind of a growing thing that you're seeing across the country. This attempt by, and it's predominantly Democrats, to try and jam in edgy comedy, try and jam in profanity to their comments. You see this all over the place now. It's this attempt to be cool, I guess, because all the kids are using profanity, I think, is the justification for it. Therefore, if we, as the Democrat Party, if we use profanity, then we are, by extension, cool. Voters will say, yeah, that's a cool video laced with a bunch of F-bombs, which, by the way, are all censored out. So, it's this weird dichotomy where you're trying to be edgy. You're trying to say these comments and slam dunk the Republicans, but you bleep out the profanity. It's obvious what she said, but you bleep it out. So you're willing to say it, but you're not willing to say it all the way, right? I could use profanity on this show. Obviously, I'd have to bleep it to be on the radio. So I'd have to use the words and then bleep them. Kind of defeats the entire purpose, right? as I mentioned, I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, stand-up specials. There's plenty of profanity in those. It's not bleeped out. Why? Because you lose the whole premise of it when you have to censor the words. And obviously for broadcast television and broadcast radio, you do in fact have to censor those things because you're dealing with the Federal Communications Commission and words that you can and cannot say. That's how radio works. That's why when you turn on the radio in your car, it is not laced with profanity, right? Social media platforms, of course, do not have those things. So you can in fact go on YouTube, go on Instagram, go on X, go on TikTok, any of these other social media platforms and use profanity openly. And you're not going to be censored for that. Now, people who don't want to listen to that might say, I'm not going to follow this account. I don't want to hear these kinds of words, but you're allowed to do it. So the Democrats put out this video here in North Carolina, self-censor themselves, and then run to left-wing media here in North Carolina and defend it as sketch comedy, defend it as satire. It's so half-baked. It's so low effort. And it's arguably sets up a miserable situation moving forward for the Democrat Party, right? Because they are in the minority. They have been completely unsuccessful in convincing voters here in North Carolina over the last 15 years that they have any good ideas to bring forward. Folks, we have a supermajority as Republicans. We have a supermajority in the North Carolina Senate. We are one vote shy of said supermajority in the North Carolina House. It's not like Democrats are 1 or 2 votes away from seizing power and control. They're not even close. And this has been a consistent trend now for more than a decade. And so at a certain point, you would assume if you're the Democrat Party, and I'm very glad that I'm not a Democrat voter here in North Carolina, because I'd be livid. My party would be so useless, so inefficient, so ineffective at anything. They can't even get close to gaining a majority in North Carolina. It's been 15 years, and it's not like the General Assembly is elected every 5 years. No, every 2 years, the entirety of the North Carolina House and North Carolina Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. They've had shot after shot after shot every 24 months, the ability to gain power, to gain control, to stand up in front of the North Carolina people and say, we have better ideas. We have better policies. We have better platforms. We have better everything than the Republicans. They have been completely incapable of doing that. Their ideas suck. Their ideas are no good. And that has put them in this, I would argue, lose-lose situation. They're not part of the discussion because they get blown out every 2 years in elections here in North Carolina. They want everybody to work with them, which is not, of course, not going to happen. I've already laid that out for you. And so now the grandiose solution by the North Carolina Democrat Party, the grandiose solution here by Sidney Batch is to run to Instagram, self-censor herself, and claim that Republicans want you to be homeless, and use a whole bunch of profanity to describe this in her video where she claims that she's going to be the outrage interpreter. No laugh tracks, no humor in said video. That's where the Democrat Party is here in North Carolina. And I would suspect, as we approach the midterm elections coming up here in November, that we will see a similar situation unfold to the ones that we've seen over the last 15 years. Republicans will retain their majorities in both chambers of the North Carolina General Assembly, and Democrats will be in the same spot, in the same position. And like always, there is nobody else to blame but the Democrats themselves. There's nobody else to point the finger at. Of course, they'll claim, oh my God, gerrymandering and all these issues as to why they can't win. Folks, it's a whole lot simpler than that. It is not a complicated issue. Their ideas suck. Their policies suck. North Carolinians lived through it prior to 2010, and they very clearly understand that the Democrat Party here in North Carolina is largely incapable of governance. Largely incapable. We've seen it. The history is here. You don't have to go back 60 years to see when Democrats were in control. All you got to do is go back to 2010 and prior. And you can see a state that was broke, and that owed the federal government hundreds of millions of dollars worth of medical debt, a state that was furloughing employees, teachers, law enforcement, all other state employees, a budget every 2 years that spent more than the state was anticipating to take in, no savings account, no rainy day funds, no cash reserves, nothing. Why? Because Democrats' tax and spend policies didn't work. Highest income tax rate in the Southeast, highest corporate income tax rate in the Southeast. That's what Democrats left North Carolina in when they lost power in 2010. Since that period of time, Republicans have done an absolutely phenomenal job of steering the ship, getting it in the right direction, and here they are. Here they are. So, bravo to the Democrat Party. You guys suck. Your ideas are terrible, and voters do not care. They're not interested in you. They don't care about your edgy humor, your edgy outrage. I mean, they're just losers. You have all these great ideas. You have all these great policies, all these great agenda items. Convince the voters of North Carolina that your ideas are better. They haven't been able to do so, and they won't because their ideas suck. That's the long and the short of this story. So as we continue over the next couple of weeks, and a budget undoubtedly will be passed by the North Carolina General Assembly, this satire video published by Sidney Batch and other members of the Democrat Party here in North Carolina will look even more stupid. So that's where we're at right now. We'll keep an eye on the reaction as the House gavels back in today. They are expected a session. We'll follow that and see if there's any discussion on the House floor. We'll bring it to you right here on the Nick Craig Show. President Donald Trump over in Europe for the G7 summit. We'll be keeping an eye on that in the coming days as well. Plus, oil prices have absolutely plummeted. Oil prices now below $80 a barrel as a deal with Iran has apparently been made, signed on to. A full signing ceremony will be happening on Friday. Obviously, there's still some pretty significant amount of time between now and Friday, and so we'll keep an eye on that as well and bring you the latest as we track it right here on the Nick Craig Show. All right, that's going to do it for a Tuesday edition. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. Don't forget that the Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m. YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook is also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. That's going to do it for a Tuesday edition. We'll be back tomorrow morning right here on the Nick Craig Show.